Welcome to Secrets of the Sussexes, where we separate what's human from what's staged. Across the ocean, the Duke of Netflix has stepped back into the spotlight with deep reflections on how parenthood changes everything, and somehow did it on the very day Britain remembers Elizabeth II. It's hard to imagine a louder backdrop for an intimate thought than the anniversary of a monarch's death, Windsor, St. George's Chapel, and a multi-camera privacy that, conveniently, every key outlet notices. No surprise, if PR is your hammer, any date looks like a nail that must be driven into the headlines. The pattern is familiar. First, a quiet visit to his grandmother's resting place, where silence is supposed to speak louder than words. Then a gentle half-step shift from silence to meaning, how hard parenting can be, how other people's pain feels different now, how everything changes when you hold your own children. The statement is correct, no one can argue with it. That's its neatest trick. A universal truth sticks to any scene and needs no proof. Yesterday it could be said on a balcony after an interview, today at a charity gala, tomorrow on a podcast. It's a plug-and-play phrase, a quick bridge from "Why are you here?" to "Why are you in the center again?" The trouble is the context, and Harry's context hasn't changed in years. He carries a script in which every frame ultimately has to reflect him. At Well Child, that was painfully clear. In a room where people say the names of children, clinicians, and parents who have pulled life back from the brink, where most adults naturally choose to be the background, he still hunts for the focus. He reads thanks, gives compliments, looks the night's heroes in the eye, and within the next breath come the reflexive lines. I realized. I felt. I see differently now. Parenthood turned me upside down. In a vacuum, it's honest. In reality, it dovetails a little too perfectly with the old habit, turning every they into I. The story we ought to end on didn't start at the gala, it began hours earlier at the family vault. A private farewell everyone knew about precisely because it was supposed to be known by no one. Not because cameras stood there, but because that's how logistics work when life is a newshook. There's always a chance witness, a confirmed tip, a crafted line that rebrands public as private. Meanwhile, other family members did what the late Queen did best: quiet, steady work that earns its applause after the fact and needs no stage direction. The contrast wrote itself, and not in favor of the one trying to take the prime frame away from memory. No one disputes that parenthood changes how you see the world. On that point it's easy to believe every word. Yesterday you felt sympathy, today you sense the edge of pain on your own skin. Yesterday Well Child stories were moving, today they draw a physical dotted line inside you. Which is exactly why parenthood confessions demand the simplest, hardest thing, nothing extra attached. Your everything changes can't double as another chance to show the world how much you hurt and how complicated you are. It can't become a performance of privacy. And it shouldn't share a timeline with dates guaranteed to turn the personal into the public. Here, Well Child sets a bar you can't dodge. On this stage, people believe you not because you have a title or a famous voice, but because you know how to stand in the shadows when the light belongs elsewhere. That's the only maturity test for anyone fronting a night like this. You have a past that will be questioned. You have a conflict that will be mapped onto every move. You have an industry that profits when you add a fresh quote to its storyline. All of that must be switched off in one motion, by removing yourself. There's no technique, only a decision revealed in the first seconds after you enter the room. Meanwhile, backstage papers rustle. Insiders whisper again about a possible meeting with his father, a small chance of a step change, a willingness to leave the past behind. Illness in a family makes such talks sharper. No one jokes about that. But this plot shares the same flaw as the others: it loves the camera too much. If a meeting is truly needed, no one will hear of it. If everyone hears of it, it wasn't needed by the people you're trying to convince. On this field, the king chose the discipline of silence long ago. It's hard to respect for those whom silence has never paid, but this is where the price of quiet is higher than the value of any right words. Back to parenthood changes everything. Let's say aloud what the smooth phrasing hides. Parenthood is not an indulgence for behavior. It explains why you're softer toward others' pain, not why you keep using someone else's pain as a stage for your emphasis. It deepens empathy, but it doesn't excuse ego. It gives you language for what matters, but it doesn't license you to replace everything else with that language. That's where the swap occurs here. The right words stay put, the wrong situations multiply around them. If you want people to hear those you're there to honor, you say the right words and then you disappear from the frame. If you want them to hear you, you do the opposite. Public fatigue with this swap no longer hides behind politeness. People hear the children's voices and the flipped microphone that again lines up a familiar family shadow. They see gratitude to the clinicians and how that gratitude becomes a push for the next turn of a personal saga. They recognize something simple. Where most stars are hooked on applause, the Sussexes are hooked on the center of the shot. It eats everything it touches, even what never needed their presence. Especially what didn't. That's why the moment with the teenager who declined to shift the conversation to his brother rang louder than any column. He didn't argue or sneer or expose the guest. He simply refused to gift someone else's ego what it came for. In an instant, the line between confession and performance became visible. It's easy to accuse the content maker of always being like this, but the real subject is growth. It has no titles or resumes. It is defined by one ability: to stop talking about yourself when someone nearby needs the microphone more. You can quote glossy interviews forever, how parenthood stitches a new vulnerability into you, how every sorrow echoes personally now. True enough. But truth demands proof indeed. At Well Child, the names, diagnoses, timelines, and stories are not content for someone, they are life. Those who understand this ration their words and give away their attention. Those who don't do the reverse and then wonder why their noble motives are called cynical. Optics works that way. It doesn't trust words when gestures keep contradicting them. The whole week played like a test. An anniversary, a private visit, a charity gala, talk of a possible meeting, you could have walked the line without a single misstep. No one demanded a bunker or a media blackout. Only one simple thing: make the frame not about you. Every try at one more elegant pivot gave the game away. In this story, the lead is still you. As long as that's true, any talk about children, parents, public service, and a changed outlook will sound like perfect end credits for a film whose plot hasn't changed. The hardest part for Harry's admirers is that this won't be fixed by a fresher phrase or a new magazine exclusive, only by the absence of phrases and exclusives where they don't belong. Respect isn't a product you can reinvent with press. It's a tool you either have or you don't. It's visible instantly and needs no spotlight. If you still have to prove it every 6 months with another confession, the tool is still in the shop. So let's state it cleanly. Parenthood really does change everything for those willing to change. Memory truly needs quiet from those able to be silent. Charity truly quiets the ego for those whose ego can switch off. For Harry, all of that remains mostly textual. In gestures, it's the same as ever: date, frame, confession, and the hope that this time people will believe without reservations. And every time, someone, a child, a volunteer, a viewer, stops the mechanism. Because what's at stake for them is life, not storyline. If there's any chance of a turn here, it starts where the crutches of language end. No, as a father, I've realized, no, I'm closer to others' pain now, no difficult days of remembrance. Just one shot that will never see the light. You came, did what you should, and left, leaving the stage to those it was built for. Then no one will doubt you're there for the work, not for yourself. Until then, the parenthood confession remains a product with a handy label that sticks to everything, complete with a target audience, familiar triggers, and guaranteed reach. Which is exactly why fewer believe it, not because the words are bad, but because the packaging is far too loud for the contents. We know you see that difference just as clearly. No poll needed. Only the feeling that remains after the broadcast. If you remember the children's names, the night succeeded. If you remember one more parenthood changed me, it went wrong again. That's not a question for viewers or the press, it's for the one person who can stop repeating the same turn. What matters more, the familiar role, or finally, the adult quiet?